everyone. Welcome to our session. I'm Lucy and this is Deb, and we're from the Insights team here in Google. And our talk today is about how search trends can help you understand changes in consumer behaviour and use that in your marketing and advertising. Now, every year, trillions of searches take place on Google, okay? Trillions worldwide. And what you might not know is that 15% of those are new every single day. Okay, so 15% every single day, new terms, new things that people want to find out. It's an eye-watering amount of insight into what the world, what real people are thinking and feeling. And our job is to analyse those trends and try and make sense of them for marketers. And this year, we've looked at all the search trends in 2022, and we have 3 macro trends overall. And here they are. One around health, one around money, and one around travel. Okay, so far so obvious. We were a bit like, well, that's a bit embarrassing. It's nothing very insightful there. What are we going to do? How are we going to fill our talk? So instead, what we thought we'd do is we'd talk to you about how we find insights and turn something that initially seems quite obvious. How do we turn the obvious into the useful and something insightful instead? And to do that, we use a tool called Google Trends. Here it is on the screen. It's available for everyone to use. It's fairly easy to get started. Google have done all the heavy lifting for you. It's the tool we use as well. But there are some tips to get the most out of it. And I'm going to introduce my colleague Deb here, who is a world-leading search trends expert. And he's going to give us a look under the hood of how we use the tool to drive our marketing here in Google.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Trillions of searches, 15% of them new. How do we find context in all of these searches? To do that, I built a very simple framework, which consists of 2 things. First, an entity. So whenever all of us are searching, I'm sure we have an entity in mind that we're interested in, which is why we are making that search, right? So it can be a laptop, a shoe, a book, or even a restaurant. But when was the last time you searched for this and just left it at that? Did you just search for shoe and laptop? Perhaps you did, but more often than not, you will be making some additions to your searches to get closer to the result that you want. So things like you might say best books or restaurants near me, or even you might say best restaurants near me, or even you might say best Indian restaurants near me. Each addition that you're making is getting you closer and closer to the result that you want. And we call these additions as modifiers. Now, as we speak, modifiers are getting longer and more complex. And I truly believe that modifiers are uniquely characteristic to Google searches. Now let me explain the concept of modifiers by taking you through some examples from across the pandemic. I think it was a bit of a shared experience, so I'm sure all of us will be able to relate to it. And to show you and to help you visualize this, I'm going to use Google Trends for each of them. The first example that I have is working out. Perhaps we all worked out when the pandemic started, maybe not, it's fine. But then working out is not new, right? We were all working out before the pandemic. We are going to work out after the pandemic. So what was different during this period? So what we did was to investigate the modifiers around the entity of workout. And look what we found. We found there were different modifiers that were peaking only in this period, which were not peaking before, and perhaps now that we analyze, it's not going to peak later. The chart that you see on your screen is from Google Trends from Jan 2020 to Jan 2022. And we saw modifiers like workout for beginners, no equipment workout, best home workout was peaking during the pandemic, and then has gone back down to pre-pandemic levels again. Maybe we did not have trainers, maybe we just have ceilings and floors to work with. So these make sense, right? And these made sense only during this period of time. So that means the modifiers gave us context. Now, not only will modifiers help us give context, it also help us identify new emerging behavior. And this is perhaps a personal one as well. How many of us, when we search for something and we see that an auto-suggestion also pops up, kind of revealing that we are all thinking about that, and we are like, it's just not me. That happened to me when I was searching for something called Can You Freeze, the gnocchi that I had just bought from the store. So what I did was, during the pandemic, I used to make minimal grocery visits, and then I used to get a lot of food, and I had to freeze it. And this is what was happening with a lot of people as well. And I saw so many entities which were coming up with this modifier, can you freeze, during the pandemic as well. And you can see that this specific modifier peaked during the pandemic on this chart, which is from Feb 2020 to July 2020.
I have to interject there, Deb, to say I'm another of those people who searched for can you freeze, and I thought I was the only one. But I'm here to tell you, you can't freeze cucumbers.
Well,
really don't try it.
Well, then we don't have to search for it anymore. We know the answer that you cannot freeze cucumbers. And what happened after we searched for can you freeze? Subsequently, after a few months, we noticed that fridge freezers, terms containing fridge freezers, had peaked. So knowing that this behavior had emerged would have helped us so much when this demand for this specific product was peaking. Another example, and I have to pause and slowly take you through this chart because I found it fascinating. So there are three aspects to this chart. From Jan 2019 to 2020, possibly before the pandemic, 2020 to 2021, perhaps during the pandemic, and hopefully 2021 to 2022, which had a bit of the pandemic, and hopefully we are in a space that it's getting over. Now, this is of two modifiers, near me and online. Look how they were of comparative search interest before the pandemic. During the pandemic, whenever there was a lockdown, the moment the pandemic started, search interest for online jumped up, and near me went the opposite direction because obviously some of the services you could not access anymore because they had closed down. But they pivoted online and you could access the online versions for it. So classes near me became online classes. And whenever the lockdown was being lifted, you could see near me used to go back up again, and then again online used to dip. Now, hopefully, as we're seeing the pandemic nearing its end, we can see the search interest for near me has now gone back significantly up, while online has gone back to pre-pandemic levels. Now, this chart might seem obvious now, but imagine during the pandemic, whenever somebody used to come to me and say that, hey, do we know, are people going out again? Are people staying in? Are they going online? These two modifiers was enough for me to show that yes, people are going out or they are staying at home, etc. And remember, this chart is on Google Trends, so you can make it yourself as well and try this out. But the behavior of online might have gone back to pre-pandemic levels, but it's left some habits. Another application of modifiers. Not only can you visualize what's happening, you can also understand whether some of the habits have sustained itself as well. And one of those habits is asking questions. And I do feel all of us can relate to this. We did ask a lot of questions before the pandemic, and after the pandemic started, we saw it peak as well. But most importantly, it's not gone back to pre-pandemic levels. The search interest for questions are slightly higher now after the pandemic than it ever was before, meaning people are asking more and more questions, and they've settled asking more questions as well. I cannot leave the topic of modifiers without discussing this last chart. Now, this is different. This is not the pandemic anymore. This goes back 5 years to June 2017. And look, it peaks during the summer and peaks during the winter. What if I told you this is the same entity, and when you add two different modifiers, once it peaks with one modifier, it peaks during the summer, with another modifier, it peaks during the winter. To give you a hint, this entity is a piece of clothing. Ready? This is white jeans and black jeans. The same jeans, the same entity, peaks during the summer where people want to wear white, and black jeans peaks during the winter when people perhaps prefer black. And where do you think blue jeans is? It's right through the middle.
Thank you, Deb. I love that example. If you just looked for the entity, if you just looked for jeans, you've got a straight line. Okay, and where's the insight in that? You add the modifiers, you suddenly have a whole different picture. So now we know about entities and modifiers. Let's have another look at our three trends, okay? The three slightly obvious trends we talked about earlier. And let's have a dig about whether we can get any extra insight from adding modifying factors. So things, just a reminder, things like time, like location, or like emotion, okay? So we looked again at these three trends and their modifiers, and we saw a lot of emotion. And in particular, there were two overriding emotions that were kind of in tension with each other, okay? So there's a sentiment around uncertainty, and there's a sentiment around sort of optimism, or cautious optimism, I would say. So it's already a little bit more interesting, right? Search can show you people's feelings and emotions, not just facts and things that they're looking for. And as marketers, we're in the business of understanding feelings and emotions, right? They make up human behavior. So it suddenly gets a lot more powerful. So going to our first trend, healthy balance. there's no surprises here, right? During the pandemic, we all wanted to understand how to look after ourselves. And terms like anxiety or meditation or stress relief all rose greatly during the pandemic. What's interesting is they've carried on rising in 2022, okay? So this growth in healthy balance and well-being is a sustained behaviour. It wasn't a pandemic blip. You can see on the screen here that searches for curative health in South Africa have gone up 900% just in 2022 so far. So Deb, what other interesting modifiers did you see in this category?
So you talked about emotions and feelings, right? And I saw some of the modifiers. Obviously, people were searching for health a lot, and there were so many modifiers that were coming up. But there were some which had that feeling, that emotional undertone. And this is one of those modifiers that stuck with me. When to worry. People are not only searching for how to worry, perhaps, can I worry? They're searching for when to worry, right? So they don't only want information. They're almost at the point of seeking opinion from Google. Something to think about. And not only are people searching more in the health category and searching diversely about physical and mental well-being, they also search exactly when they want that information. And here are some examples of it. At 2 a.m., searches for anxiety peaks in the UK. At 6 a.m., perhaps people want a fresher start to the day, they search meditation. And perhaps after a grueling day of work, they want to go to the gym, so the search is for gym peaks at 7 p.m.
So, health and well-being, I'm thinking maybe they're becoming non-negotiable. This is a sustained trend after the pandemic. So if balance and well-being is a key factor in people's decisions, how does that apply to my customers, whatever category I'm in? So I'd be looking at that. Going to our second trend, which is money matters. Again, no great surprises. We're in possibly the biggest cost of living crisis in many people's living memory. And you can see here searches containing annual inflation in Turkey have gone up 200% again, just this year. So Deb, talk to us about the modifiers in this category.
So one search modifier, in fact, the entity that I analyzed was invest. Personally, I've just started to invest and I was interested. And I noticed the modifiers like best, how, what was coming up with invest a lot. In fact, the search interest for terms like what to invest, how to invest, best stocks to invest was 33% for all of the terms containing invest, showing that the need for financial literacy is rising amongst people.
So that's really interesting. So now I'm thinking, right, even if I'm not in the finance business, I'm thinking there's an emotional shift for help there. So how might that apply to my category? And is my content marketing responding to that kind of emotional ask for support rather than just the factual information? And then our third macro trend, which was travel. Has anybody already booked their summer travel plans? I know I have. This is where we saw that duality of emotions through, so uncertainty and cautious optimism. So the staycation, hate that word, but the staycation has continued to grow. Obviously it was huge during the pandemic. It's continued to grow. It's another sustained behaviour maybe playing out that people are still uncertain about international travel. But there's a new trend that we've come through, which is all around people going really big. And you can see here on the screen, searches for all-inclusive travel have gone up 800% in Denmark this year, 800% for the kind of the big package. So Deb, what else can you tell us about travel?
So I think not only have a lot of us perhaps have booked our travels, I wanted to understand if there is a pattern there. Is there a specific day that we prefer when we were searching for flights? In fact, we do. Overwhelmingly, EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East and Africa, prefers Sunday to be the day when they search for the search terms containing flight. But there's some outliers. Saudi Arabia searches for it on Monday, Nigeria searches for it on Wednesday, and UAE does it on a Saturday. In fact, in the UK, the search term interest for the term flight goes up by 10% on a Sunday compared to any other day of the week.
So why is this interesting if I'm not in travel? Again, the underlying emotion is pent-up demand, right? So I'd be going, oh, is that universal? How does that apply to my category? If I was in luxury category, I'd really be looking closely at my trends in that area. So I hope you can see how we use Google Trends to understand people better. Okay, and we have 3 key takeaways just to leave you with. And the first one is look for the changes, okay? Understand how search behavior changes for your category. Remember to look for things like geolocation, time of day of the week. Remember the example we gave here with that anxiety peaking at 2 a.m., you can learn a lot by adding these extra modifiers in, or what language people are searching in. All these things can bring you additional insight.
The second aspect is also the longitudinal change. Now, this is not only about understanding when people are searching, but how much has shifted over the years. This is also kind of showing how strong a tool Google Trends is, and I'm going to prove it through a chart. So this chart has two modifiers, best and cheap. And look at this. It goes back 2004. Not only are we able to understand how much are people searching for best and cheap, we can even understand how much they did 2 decades back. It's a very strong story here.
So our third takeaway is to always remember to understand the power of search modifiers, okay? Modifiers are powerful indicators of change, of changing demand in a category. Think of them like the canary in the coal mine, okay? And if you remember the freezers and the can you freeze example that Deb talked to you about earlier. So start to think about the modifiers that matter for your business, whatever your business is, because modifiers not only help us understand intent, they help us better understand intent because they add insight into people's feelings and people's emotions, right? And feelings and emotions and intent are so central to how people make decisions. And our business as marketers is understanding people and getting in their heads and understanding how people make decisions and ultimately influencing them. So those were our takeaways. If you want to dive deeper into the trends, we have an article on Think with Google. You can subscribe, you can sign up, and so on and so forth. Thank you so much for your time today, and we hope you learned something new.